What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to set out to fix the Green Bay Packers. Not really, because nobody from 1265 is actually watching this, but we're going to throw some things out to the ether anyway, see if maybe something sticks down the line. But before we get there, couple transactions from Tuesday that took place. First of all, Innis Gaines is back. He is on the practice squad again. I'm actually kind of excited about this. I actually thought he had a very nice training camp up until the point that he was hurt. Thought he was very much in the conversation for one of those safety spots. Would he have made it or not? Probably not. Probably would have ended up being a practice squad guy, especially, they obviously liked Tariq Carpenter and wanted to keep him, and Micah Abernathy came on at the end. So not sure that Gaines would have actually ended up making a roster spot even had he not been injured, but I do think he would have been an immediate practice squad guy had it not been for the injury. So really like to see him back. I do think he has special teams upside, and he does show some playmaking ability every now and again as well. So like that signing for Green Bay from a practice squad standpoint. On the flip side, they removed both Benji Franklin as well as Ray Wilborn from the practice squad. Wilborn, a bit of a disappointment just in the fact of they put a lot of time, effort, and energy of, kind of helping his transition to linebacker and then keep him on the roster and practice squad. He actually got reps with the ones at times in mini camps and OTAs, and you get no return on investment on that whatsoever. Doesn't play a snap, is now gone from the practice squad. So certainly wish those guys the best of luck and appreciate the time that they carried the G on that helmet, but definitely disappointing that, especially from a Wilborn standpoint, they never got any return on that investment. But that does it for transactions on Tuesday. Let's jump into the main crux of the topic today, and that's what can Green Bay realistically do at this point to help this team and to get back to the point where we all expected them to be. I think, this offseason, every offseason for every team, there's that moment where hope springs eternal and everyone thinks that their team is set for a Super Bowl season. And then sometimes reality hits and you realize that the team you thought you had is not what you actually have when the team gets on the field and you actually have to play games on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays, etc. So there are some things that I think this team can do. Let me start by just saying I don't think it's super realistic that they're going to acquire some player via trade and it's just going to change everything. First of all, they don't have a ton of salary cap space that they can go out and go get a player. Secondly, there's not a lot of teams that are selling. Like every team is basically like within a game of a playoff spot. You have the Panthers and Texans, a couple of teams here and there, like the Commanders, if Green Bay wins this weekend, hopefully they could be a team that sells, but there's not a ton of teams that are selling. The Bears probably aren't interested in trading with the Packers, and they're one of the few teams that could look to potentially sell. So there's just not a lot of options out there for teams that could be willing trade partners. Add in the fact that from a salary cap standpoint, you're a little bit in a tough situation, to say the least. And then is Brian Gutekunst going to want to mortgage a bunch of future draft picks on a team that does not look very good right now? That is going to be a major question that he's going to have to answer as well. So all of that is to say, even if they did go out and trade for somebody, I'm not expecting it to be somebody that you're just like, holy crap, cannot believe they got this player, and they come in and completely change the outlook of this team. The 98% of the fix is going to have to come from within, from the coaches and the players and just the overall everything that's at 1265 currently. And if that doesn't happen, if the star players that they have don't start playing better, if the coaches can't get it figured out on how to best utilize these players, all those sort of things, it's probably just not going to happen, right? So it starts and ends with the people that are already at 1265. Could they make a transaction that helps the team, like a Rasul Douglas from a season ago, like OBJ helped the Rams last year? Could something like that help? Absolutely. And I think there are some options out there, but I think overall it's going to have to come from within. So here are my 10 ways that I think the Packers can really help their cause and how they could potentially get fixed over the course of the next, 11 regular season weeks until they hopefully get prepared for the playoffs. I know playoffs seems like a little bit of a, not a stretch. They're well within the playoff conversation, but anything beyond that, or even just trying to get there first, is like kind of the first thing on the checklist. But I think we're all hopeful that this is still going to be a team that ultimately ends up being one of those 7 teams in the NFC. And if that's the case, you've got 11 weeks to figure out all the ailments that are really striking you at the moment and trying to figure out remedies for them sooner rather than later. So here are my 10 ideas on how the Packers can fix themselves over the remainder of the regular season. Number one, I think we saw some really solid steps with the defense this past week, but I think you need to lean into the changes that you made this past week, and I actually think you need to get more aggressive. I don't think this is a defense and a team that can sit back and play bend but don't break defense. You're setting yourself up for failure. This isn't a good enough tackling defense. This isn't a offense that is going to help you out enough and have some sustained drives on their side where, you can, basically what we saw against the Giants where they have a big taxing drive and then the offense goes three and out. And then you have a big taxing drive and then the offense goes 3 and out. And those things are just going to tax your defense way too much. So I think you have to be way more aggressive. And I think the other thing with being aggressive as well is that this team has showed outside of the Jets game, which was hopefully an anomaly, this team has overall shown that they can be very good on third down. Let's be a bit more aggressive on first down to get you into some of those third and long situations. And if they pick up a first down on their first down because they were over aggressive, that's okay. As long as you're not giving up a touchdown, you have an opportunity to do it over and maybe be aggressive on the next first down and maybe get them for a loss and hopefully get them into some of those third and long situations. But more importantly here, I think you have the personnel for it. I think this personnel just makes a lot more sense staying aggressive and being aggressive. I think you can bring some blitzes with Quay Walker. I want Quay Walker and Darnell Savage to think less and react more. Just go out and use their raw, natural athleticism. And I think by playing a more aggressive brand of football, a more fly to the football, see ball, hit ball philosophy rather than having to think and diagnose and, keep backpedaling. I want those guys attacking and playing forward football. That's the first thing. And then, I just think that you can help out on some of the pressure rate. And most importantly, I think you can gain some turnovers, which you desperately need. And I think the offense desperately needs those little kick starts to get the team some points and get that offense going. So I need to see the defense playing a bit more aggressive. That maybe ends up in a little bit more point production, but let's be real. The bend but don't break has not worked and you're giving up points that way anyway. This way, maybe you're getting some turnovers. Maybe you're getting them off the field quicker. Maybe you're getting some plays that get your crowd going, that get this team just a little bit more juice and momentum and pizzazz and everything else. So I need to see this team play in a more aggressive brand of defense. And you know what? I am willing to live with Rasul Douglas and Eric Stokes and Jair Alexander in the slot, on the outside and in the slot respectively, playing press man-to-man, and I know I'm going to get beat sometimes. I know that's going to happen. But you know what? I'm willing to play Darnell Savage in that robber role. I'm willing to keep Adrian Amos as my deep safety. I'm willing to bring Quay Walker on some blitzes and Devondre Campbell and use his athleticism a little bit more. And maybe do some things where you drop some guys into coverage and just be a bit more exotic and a bit more aggressive. And I think they started doing some of those things and took a real solid step in the right direction this past week against the Jets with scheme. I'm not saying the results were where we want it to be, but overall, I thought the scheme and the philosophy was better. You need to lean into it even more and become a more aggressive style of defense. Number two, had the opportunity to talk about this a little bit with Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers on Pack-A-Day Live yesterday, but I think you need to lean more into Romeo Dobbs. He's just getting open at a clip that the other receivers are not. He is getting separation. He is able to win deep. He's able to win intermediate. He's able to win short. He has some run after the catch ability. Right now, if I had to say who I want to see this offense run through, it's Aaron Jones and Romeo Dobbs. Those are your playmakers. And simply put, you have to feature your playmakers right now. So Romeo Dobbs is the receiver that, listen, there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some mistakes that he's going to have to work out of his system over time. He's had a couple bad routes here and there. He's had a couple plays where he ran the wrong route. Like, those things need to get cleaned up, and there's no two ways about it. But I do think that he is the best receiver on this team already. And I think if you can continue to get him more momentum, and I know they're targeting him quite a bit already, but I want to see more times where he's the initial read because he is winning quick off the line of scrimmage. And I've mentioned this before. If you've got, let's just say it's Dobbs and Lazard, and we'll say Sammy Watkins now in the game since he could be coming back and Cobb could be out injured. we know that Rodgers has sort of that baked in trust with Lazard, and before it was Cobb, and I think it still is the case with Watkins as well. If you have that baked in trust with Cobb and Watkins and Lazard, let them be the secondary reads. Let Romeo be the first read because he's winning quickly off the line of scrimmage and has the ability to win some of those plays really quick and hit some explosives to him. And then come back to the guys that you trust because you know they're going to be in the right spot at the right time at the right place. You have that trust in them. You can be looking at Dobbs and have faith as Aaron Rodgers that you know where those two receivers are going to be. Instead of looking at Lazard and Watkins or Cobb first because you have trust in them and then they're not getting open. So you come back to Dobbs and you have to sort of recalibrate and be like, okay, is he going to be in the right spot? And I haven't had eyes on him. So like, where is he? Can I trust him, etc. So start with Dobbs, feature him, come back to the guys that you trust in the Lazards, the Cobbs, the Watkins, the Tunyons, the Joneses, etc. But make Dobbs that first read and see if he can create some of those explosives on the outside with his just route running ability and playmaking ability, because he is a potential star in the making. And I think there's a lot more meat on the bone if you continue to feature him more in this offense. Number 3, I'm with Aaron Rodgers on this. Let me explain. I do think you need to simplify things right now for this offense. That does not mean don't use motion. That doesn't mean you can't do cool plays. That doesn't mean you can't, use Christian Watson on some reverses and end arounds and do some gadget plays. In fact, I actually want to see a little bit more of that in just some creative play calling. But that being said, I do think you have to walk before you run. And I feel like what Aaron Rodgers is saying is like, hey, we've got some of these complex calls and we've got a play that has a play and then a can built into it. And you have a play that everyone has to react at the same time where, I have to read a defender and whatever happens based off of that, the wide receiver and the offensive line have to do things slightly differently. And I think what Rodgers is saying is that we're not good enough as an offense to do the high level stuff. Like we can get there eventually, but we're trying to, do advanced calculus when we're struggling with addition and subtraction, right? Like that's what it feels like right now. It's like we've got to get back and we've got to figure out, simple arithmetic. And once we get that down, then we can get to calculus. And I think that's what Rodgers is saying by simplifying things. And I think it's basically a way of saying we need to get back to the fundamentals. We need to make sure that our blitz pickups are good, that our communication along the offensive line is succinct and that everyone is on the same page. We've got to make sure that our receivers are running the correct routes on our simple plays. As Aaron Nagler pointed out, you're running the most basic stretch play in your entire playbook, a day one install play, and it's going for a 3 or 4 yard loss. It's not that an easy play is going to be better or that a hard play is going to be worse, but it's just you're at a point offensively right now with some youth on the team, with some new players on the team, and just from an overall lack of execution on the team right now where you've got to take the step back, focus on the simple things first, do that stuff right, master that, and then you can sort of go for your PhD in calculus and crazy play calls at that point. So I'm in agreement with Rodgers on that. There's a lot of season left. Focus on what you're good at first. Figure out what you're good at first. Master that, and then do some of the more complicated stuff. Number 4, embrace who you are as a team. You are not an explosive playmaking football team. You have to be a defensive first team that is complemented by its offense and its special teams. Take points on offense when you can get them. Don't make crazy 4th down calls. That was actually one of the low-key thing I don't think anyone's mentioned this week is I hated the 4th down decision from the Packers before halftime where they go for it on 4th down and they take the shot play down the field and they end up turning the ball over on downs and the Jets get great field position before halftime, right? I hated that because your defense was playing so great. Pin them deep based on the time on the clock. You're going to have the ability to get the ball back and you still are going to have time to score points. You don't need it on this 4th down play. So you've got to lean into who you are as a team. This isn't the same Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, MVS, explosive offense that we saw at times over the last couple of seasons. You are a different team. And if you continue to try to be something you're not, you're going to keep ramming your head into the wall and you're not going to make any progress. Run the football. Find a way to be a creative running team that features Aaron Jones. And make sure that your special teams isn't having these catastrophic mistakes. And make sure the defense is playing a brand of football, a more attacking brand, a more physical brand than they have, so that they can become a great defense like they need to become. But this team is not playing anything like the team that they need to be, and that they need to embrace who they are. Because if they don't, they're just going to be a shell of a team that they can't be. If you go out and try to be the Bills, but you're running without the playmakers needed to make it happen, you're going to look ridiculous. You just have to be the team that you have, with the players that you have, and start there and embrace who you are, because you're not the downfield passing team that you think you are. And if you keep trying to do it, you're not going to make any progress through the course of this season. Number 5, make the switch on the offensive line. It's not complicated at this point. Elton needs to move inside, and I don't even care who's at right tackle. Pick your right tackle, but it needs to go probably Bakhtiari, Elton, Myers, and then John Runyon Jr. And then I don't care if it's Zach Tom. I don't care if it's Royce Newman. I don't care if it's Yash Nyman. That's the spot that's probably going to need some help. I would lean towards Yash. I would lean towards Zach Tom after that. I would lean towards Royce Newman last. But I don't even care. If you have faith in Royce for whatever reason, fine. But then hopefully Elton's great at guard and can get back to playing the way he was at guard. I'm not sure that's the case, but I'm hopeful. Right tackle, somebody's going to have a little bit more of an issue there. But then at least you're just helping on one spot rather than the entire offensive line imploding from all angles. And hopefully with Bakhtiari and Elton next to each other on the left side, that's at least one side that you can feel completely confident in. And then Myers needs to get better and play more consistent. Running needs to play better and get more consistent. And then you help your right tackle out. But it's time to make a switch. I think they will this week. I think they'll lose something. I don't think they can do the same thing. But they've got to make some sort of change. And to me, that's starting a new... Maybe it's Rasheed Walker. Maybe it's, whomever. I don't even care at this point. But something's got to change. And you got to try something new on the right side of the offensive line and kick Elton back into guard. Number 6, I would shake up the coaching room a little bit. No position changes, no title changes or anything like that, but your offensive line is a unmitigated nightmare right now, and you need all hands on deck. So Adam Stenavich, I know we promoted you to offensive coordinator. We're going to keep your title, you're going to keep your pay, but you are going back into the offensive line room, and you are not leaving that room until things are fixed. That's number 1. And in the meantime, I would use Jason Vrabel as more of that offensive coordinator, game planning type coach, and let him do a little bit more of the heavy lifting that Stenavich would have to have been doing, in the offensive coordinator capacity. But I am not letting Stenavich out of that offensive line room. And I know Matt LaFleur said he's still very involved in the offensive line room. If it's not 100%, if that's not his job solely right now, then you're doing things wrong. They got to get the offensive line fixed first. And I would bring one of what I think is the best offensive line coaches back even more in the fold to make sure that that's happening sooner rather than later. Number 7, we need more practice time. And I'm not saying break the CBA, but just this past week, I know Matt LaFleur said coming off of London, they gave an extra hour to the guys to get some extra rest, which I understand. I'm not saying that was the wrong decision, but they've gone without a lot of padded practices. Like, this has been a player-friendly, less practice, more rest system through the course of Matt LaFleur's tenure. And it's worked. To his defense. It's mostly worked, besides playoff performances, to his benefit. And at this point, though, the attention to detail and the fundamentals are so bad with this team, you got to get back to practice. And that means no skimping on that stuff. You have to make sure that this team is getting back to mastering the fundamentals. And if they want time off, they got to earn it by winning football games and showing that they can handle the simple things. And then you can maybe give the players a little bit more time off. But this team needs more practice time, and they got to get back to the basics very quickly, because if you don't block and you don't tackle, you're not going to win. And right now this team can't block and they can't tackle. Number 8, I really enjoy A.J. Dillon. I think he's a sound football player. I think there's things that he can add to your team, but he's not a playmaker, and he's not a player that's going to win in the open field. And because of that, you're ultimately limited in what you can do. And this offensive line isn't winning a lot on the inside and giving you a lot of running lanes and alleys. And even when they are, Dillon right now is getting the yards that are blocked for him, and he's not getting more than that. By his nature, he wants to run into things rather than run around things. And this is 2022. It just you're not gonna Jerome Bettis your way to a bunch of yards after contact. It just is what it is. So I think A.J. Dillon can still have a role within this team. I think depending on what team you're playing against, you can use him in different situations. But the yards per target for A.J. Dillon are atrocious right now. He's not getting a bunch of yards after contact. Like, it just needs to be better. Aaron Jones, as we've said all along, needs to be the featured back. You need to give him more touches. You need to, kind of take things back on A.J. Dillon a little bit, roll it back and give him a little bit less touches. And even to the point where, you know what, if Kylan Hill's back and he's ready to play, I might be ready to see a little bit more Kylan Hill too, because right now Dillon is not getting the yards that you need him to get. And, listen, maybe it changes this week and he starts really gaining some momentum. Like I said, I think there's a role for him, but you need to scale back Dillon and you need to scale up Jones. And there's just no two ways about that right now. Number 9 may sound a bit ridiculous, and this is probably the least realistic option on here, maybe to some extent, but I'm giving JC Tretter a call. He was the 6th ranked offensive lineman by Pro Football Focus last year. He was playing fantastic football for the Browns, and when he got released by the Browns because of his contract, and remember, he's the NFLPA president, and that's probably the reason that he's not on a team if we're being real. But when he got released, he called around to NFL teams wanting to play football. He called the Vikings, I know. He called a couple other teams saying he wanted to play, and nobody wanted to take one of the top 10 centers in the league, which is beyond crazy. The Packers have nothing to hide. They can bring in the NFLPA president in and not have to worry about anything. He would reunite with Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, he was a top 6 center a season ago per Pro Football Focus. Easily probably still a top 10 center in the league right now. And you might be thinking, Andy, you've got Josh Myers. Why would you be calling JC Tretter? I believe Tretter is better than Myers, but I believe more importantly that Myers could actually benefit from moving to guard and off of center, where he has to do a lot of thinking and communication with Aaron Rodgers. And I just think his head's spinning a little bit too much, because you see him do some really incredible things, but you see him have these lapses. And it just feels like he's maybe thinking a little bit too much. And if you can get him to guard, where he still has the great size and athleticism and can hold up at the point of attack, I think you could have an even better player than you do at center. And for some reason, if Green Bay is dead set at keeping Elgton Jenkins at right tackle, which I'm not sure they are, but if that's what they want and they think, hey, in like 2 or 3 more weeks, Elton's going to be fine and settled in at right tackle, if that's what they think, I could make a strong argument that Bakhtiari, John Runyon Jr., JC Tretter, Josh Myers, and Elgton Jenkins, assuming they believe Jenkins can get right at right tackle, that could be a pretty nice fix for this offensive line. Tretter's familiar with Rodgers. I'm sure the communication would be able to be picked up pretty quick. He's super smart along the offensive front. I think that would help with some of the line checks up front and not having free blitzers coming in. It just seems like that would be a very solid veteran addition who could probably solidify your offensive line, maybe move Myers into a position where he could actually be playing better, get Royce Newman and Jake Hansen out of the lineup, and not have to change too many other things. Not saying it's maybe the most realistic thing in the world, but just know Tretter wanted to play this season, and it seemed like he retired out of like teams not willing to give him a chance more than him actually wanting to retire. Would probably take a few weeks for him to get into football shape and ready to go, but I am willing to make that phone call and see where things are at and see if he'd have any interest in playing one more season for the Green Bay Packers and retiring as a member of the Green Bay Packers. Last but not least, number 10, maybe the most important of all of them, find your soul as a football team, because it has been taken away from you, or you gave it away. I'm not sure which it is, or you never had it in the first place. You basically no-showed in the 2019 NFC Championship game against the 49ers. You basically no-showed for a half against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game at home. You no-showed in 2021 on offense and special teams in the divisional round at home against the 49ers. You no-showed versus the Giants in London for a packed crowd of Packer fans. Basically no-showed this week for the New York Jets as well, and to the point where Robert Saleh said, just keep leaning on them, basically they will quit. And they did. You have to find your soul as a football team, because right now it looks awfully soft, and it does not look like a team that come January in the playoffs going against the best of the best is going to be able to hold up and be the mentally tough, physically tough, team that they need to be to actually win football games in January and February. You've had adversity hit, you got punched in the face, your soul has been taken from you. Find it, get it back, make it better, or you are going to fail over and over and over again. And maybe you gloss over and you get some wins against the Lions and the Commanders and you get yourself in the playoffs. But if you don't find your identity, if you don't find your soul, and you don't become a badass football team, it all is for naught because you're going to lose in January and February again. That's going to do it for me today. Quick recap, lean into the aggressiveness on defense, feature Romeo Dobbs at wide receiver, simplify the offense, embrace who you are, make the switch on the offensive line, shake up the coaching room a little bit, get Steno back in the offensive line room, more practice time, more Jones, less Dillon, call JC Tretter up, see what he's up to, and find your soul as a football team. Appreciate you joining me. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.